The 2010s saw the NBA evolve more so than arguably any other decade in basketball history. Pretty much every position 1 through 5 began shooting threes, big men started handling the ball more, and the ability to guard almost all 5 slots has become pretty much a necessity in order to be competitive. Back in the 2000s, however, this was not the case. Centers rarely left the paint. Guards dribbled the air out of the ball, and three-point shooting was still infrequent. But there were a few unicorns in the era who looked like they were from the future. Everyone knows the big names: Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, and heck, even Peja Stojakovic has not been forgotten. But today I want to bring up another one of these unicorns who do not hear too much about anymore. A player whose abilities carried him to the top of the basketball world in both the United States and also his homeland of Russia. Today I want to ask the challenging question: is Andrei Kirilenko a Hall of Famer? Before we get started, please like the video below, it helps out a lot more than you realize. Subscribe if you like basketball content, and let's get going. The origins of Andrei's basketball career are nearly completely lost in history. What is known is that at the age of 16 he began playing professionally for his hometown basketball club Spartak St. Petersburg for the 1997 Russian Super League season. In doing so, he became the youngest player to ever compete in the nation's highest basketball league. Though not a lot of specifics are available, it is known that Andrei was about 6'9", 200-pound kid who possessed natural talent and athleticism never before seen in Russia. But his club struggled at the bottom of the league for 2 years. Kirilenko, however, impressed enough to earn a roster spot on the nation's most revered team, CSKA Moscow. And I know that in America a lot of people pronounce it CSKA Moscow, but if you listen to actual Russians say it, they just say CSKA, so I'm going to say CSKA. Here, Andrei blossomed into a superstar. Not only was he named an All-Star in 1999, but he also claimed the RSL Slam Dunk title and helped Moscow finish on top, winning their 8th consecutive Super League championship. Despite the lack of quality overseas talent in the United States, NBA scouts took notice to Kirilenko's accomplishments in Russia. At his height, he was more agile and versatile, especially on defense, than just about any and all American prospects. As a result of the growing intrigue, Andrei put his name into the 1999 NBA draft, and even despite him being under contract with Moscow for another 2 years, the Utah Jazz selected him 24th overall. At only 18 years of age, Kirilenko became the youngest international player to be selected into the NBA draft. Over the next 2 years, Kirilenko would continue to develop his all-around skill set in Moscow that the Utah Jazz adored. In 2000, he represented his homeland for the first time in the Sydney Olympics. Here, he was able to help the national team reach the knockout stage and ultimately finish 8th in the tournament, the highest finish for the newly founded Russian Federation since the fall of the Soviet Union about a decade prior. He would lead all competitors in these Olympics with over 2 steals per game, along with an elite 1.9 blocks per contest. A glimpse into his future role in the NBA. The next summer of 2001, Kirilenko would compete in his first Eurobasket tournament, the premier international tournament for European talent. In fact, I would go as far as saying Eurobasket is consistently more competitive than even the World Championships given the amount of quality players and teams throughout the continent. Here, Kirilenko would look spectacular, helping Russia to a 5th place finish, qualifying them for the 2002 World Championships in the process. At the conclusion of the tournament, he put up averages of 19 points, 8 rebounds, and a tournament-leading 2.8 steals and 2.8 blocks per game, solidifying himself as one of Europe's most elite defenders and all-around players. At the conclusion of the summer, Kirilenko would finally move to the States to join the Utah Jazz in the NBA. Here he would post one of the more unique rookie seasons in NBA history. I know this is awfully specific, but he became only the second rookie in NBA history to put up averages of 10 points, 4 rebounds, 1.4 steals, and 1.9 blocks per game, joining Hall of Famer David Robinson in the process. Thanks in large part to his defensive ability. With the Jazz playing alongside the aging duo of John Stockton and Karl Malone, they finished with a nothing special 44 wins, ultimately losing in the first round to the Sacramento Kings. After a disappointing 2002 World Championship run where Russia finished 10th overall, Kirilenko geared back up for the 2003 NBA season. One last hurrah year of the Stockton and Malone-led Utah Jazz. During this year, Kirilenko evolved into one of the league's most feared six men, improving his averages to 12 points, 5 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and 2.2 blocks per game. Good enough to finish third in the league in Sixth Man of the Year voting and fifth in Defensive Player of the Year voting, as only a sophomore. Again, I know these are very specific numbers, but amongst all of NBA history, only 3 guys have done this in either of their first 2 years in the league. These are Hall of Famers David Robinson and Hakeem Olajuwon. For the 6'9" Kirilenko to be amongst those legendary big men is absolutely bonkers. Despite his best efforts, however, the Jazz would finish with 47 wins this year and once again lose in the first round to the Kings. The summer of 2003 saw Kirilenko again represent his Russian national team, this time in the 2003 Eurobasket Championships. In order to qualify for the 2004 Athens Olympics, Russia would need to place in the top 3 of this tournament, and things were looking positive at the start. In pool play, Russia finished 2-1 with big wins over the continental powerhouse Serbia and the host nation of Sweden. But in the knockout stage, they would be stunned by France in a close game, falling 76-69. Despite missing the top 3 in the Olympic bid, Andrei led the Russian national team in scoring at 23 a game, and led the entirety of Eurobasket at 3.5 steals and 2.2 blocks per game. He truly laid it all on the line for his country with minimal support. In the end, he would be named to the tournament's first team for his efforts. After the second disappointing summer, Kirilenko was finally ready to take charge of the Utah Jazz franchise, but the roster was all over the place throughout the season thanks to trades and injuries, with the starting lineup never remaining consistent beyond Andrei. In this growing pain of a year, the 22-year-old Kirilenko would lead the Jazz in scoring, rebounding, steals, blocks, free throws, and three-pointers, improving all of his averages to 16, 8, 1.9, and 2.8. In all of NBA history, only Robinson and Olajuwon have replicated this all-around feat throughout a year. His fantastic play led him into making the 2004 All-Star Game, where he ended up playing major crunch time minutes near the end, guarding Tracy McGrady. This was back when people actually tried in the All-Star Game. He also was named to the All-Defensive Second Team. But what held him back from competing for Defensive Player of the Year award was likely the team's success, as the Jazz finished with 42 wins, missing the playoffs. The 2005 NBA season got off to a lightning hot start for the Utah Jazz. Led by Kirilenko and newfound teammate Carlos Boozer, they began the year winning 6 of 7 games. Injuries, however, began slowing the team down, peaking on March 24th when Andrei would break his wrist in a game against the Washington Wizards, ending his season at 41 games. Despite this, Kirilenko climbed to new heights this year, as he would lead the entirety of the NBA in blocked shots per game at a staggering 3.3. He remains with Ben Wallace and Hall of Famer Bob McAdoo as only the third player in NBA history to average as many blocks per game at 6'9" or shorter. This, along with his 1.5 steals per game, helped him secure a spot on the All-NBA defensive second team for the second consecutive year. The Jazz without Kirilenko failed to make the postseason, however. Thankfully, the wrist injury did not keep him out of competition that summer, as the honor and pride for playing for the Russian national team was something Andrei would not take for granted. This is a feeling I wish more players felt today with regards to representing their country internationally. But with so much money being tossed around, you find more and more NBAers opting to sit out the summer rather than play. In Eurobasket 05, he would once again look like a man amongst boys. But after a hot start, Russia would suffer back-to-back close losses to Germany and Italy, sealing their fate and failing to qualify for the World Championships. Despite the disappointing result, Kirilenko remained a star in the tournament, leading Russia with 17 points and all of Eurobasket with 11 rebounds, 3.3 steals, and 2.8 blocks per game. Shockingly, despite all of this, he was not named to the all-tournament first team this go-around, which I know a lot of Americans don't give a hoot and a holler about, but that is crazy. In 2006, the Utah Jazz began a new era. Kirilenko was inked to a 6-year, $86 million contract. Fellow big men Boozer and Mehmet Okur were blossoming, and rookie hotshot Darren Williams took the NBA by storm with his dazzling playmaking and scoring ability. Kirilenko settled into a fourth option role, which was fine to him. His objective was leading men and winning games, not highlight or stat chasing. Alas, Utah did not do a lot of winning this year. The team once again lacked any true superstars. Kirilenko remained a defensive hound, leading the NBA in total block shots at 220 with 3.2 blocks per game and a career-high 4 assists a night, proving that his all-around game was elite and improving. He would be named to the all-defensive first team for his efforts, though the team's success remained elusive, as the Jazz won only 33 games. There was a lot to be optimistic about in Utah, but development of the top scorers and the addition of a better bench needed to be made. Frustration was growing by this point for Kirilenko. 5 years into his NBA career, the Jazz front office had not been able to put together a winning formula to go the distance. It was as if the organization had no idea what to do post-Stockton Malone. In a controversial decision entering the 2006 NBA campaign, Jazz head coach Jerry Sloan pulled Kirilenko out of the team's offensive scheme. As a result, his minutes and shooting attempts plummeted. His scoring average fell to a career low of 8 points per game. Though the defensive effort was ever present, it did appear the Jazz organization was phasing the 25-year-old prime Kirilenko out of the system. Yet they refused to trade him, which frustrated both himself and Utah Jazz fans, along with Russian fans. But the rise of Williams, Boozer, and Okur was enough to carry the Jazz into the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. So the argument could be made that it was working, but if NBA YouTube had been a thing back then, you know trade rumors would have ran rampant and people would try to figure out how to make the Jazz title contenders because it was no secret, Kirilenko would have fetched a pretty return. In an interview, Andrei claimed he felt like an anchor to this year's Jazz team. He was not contributing like he had in years past, and it was frustrating for him as a competitor, but he had to hold it in because the team's success was so high. He was a great teammate, beloved by everyone whom he came in contact with. The Jazz would push their way into the Western Conference Finals this year, before falling to the eventual champion, San Antonio Spurs. The NBA was out of Andrei's control, but the Russian national team was his. Kirilenko returned to represent his homeland in Eurobasket 07 with a huge chip on his shoulder. He and the national team knew what they were capable of and were hell-bent on proving to the world they deserved to return to the Olympic Games. Russia got off to a great start this tournament, finishing 4-1 through pool play with impressive wins over Serbia, Greece, and Croatia. And in the knockout stage, Russia faced their biggest pitfall in years past with a difficult matchup with Tony Parker-led France. Here, Kirilenko had a poor offensive performance but tore it up defensively with 7 steals and 4 blocked shots, winning the match 75-71. Then in the semifinals, Russia was matched up against the 07 third place finishing Lithuanian team. Here, Kirilenko played out of his mind to 29 points, 8 rebounds, 3 steals, and 3 blocks to lead Russia to an 86-74 victory. Then in the championship matchup, they took on the host nation Spanish national team featuring NBA talent Pau and Marc Gasol, Jose Calderon, Sergio Rodriguez, and Rudy Fernandez. In this game, Kirilenko would lead all scorers with 17 points as Russia would win in dramatic fashion in the closing seconds, upsetting the world favorite. Russia claimed their first ever Eurobasket title, with Kirilenko walking away with tournament MVP honors, which he rightfully deserved. This was one of the world's greatest games in the 2000s, but don't ask Americans because they probably didn't even know it happened. At the conclusion of the summer tournament, Andrei admitted publicly that he would like the Utah Jazz to release him from his contract, so he may return to Moscow and the Russian Super League. This is one of the earlier examples of player empowerment you hear about so often in mainstream media, but regardless of Kirilenko's wishes, the Jazz decided to retain him for the 08 run. This year followed the same path as the last. He remained an elite defender who was being held back offensively by his coaching staff. Andrei actually improved his shooting numbers this year to career highs of 50% from the field and 37% from deep, but it only amounted to 11 points per game. The Jazz would reach the second round of the playoffs before being eliminated by the LA Lakers. The Russian return to the Olympics was not as ceremonial as Eurobasket the year prior. After defeating Iran convincingly in the opening game of the tournament, they would lose the next 4 matchups, ending the Olympic run before the knockout stage began. Despite the disappointing run, however, Kirilenko was again a force to be reckoned with on both ends of the floor, as he finished with averages of 15 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.6 steals, and 2.2 blocks per game. On-court production unlike any other in those games. The 2009 season got off to a slightly improved start for Andrei, but an ankle injury knocked him off the court for a few weeks, limiting his effectiveness for the stretch run at the end of the year. He was moved back to the bench and his shooting efficiencies dropped below his career average this year, as his on-court effectiveness was once again limited by the team role he was filling. In the eyes of the international world, he was a superstar, but in Utah, they insisted he play only a small role in their system. This season, the Jazz would fall in the first round of the playoffs to the eventual champion LA Lakers. The 2010 season was a lot of the same. Unfortunately, injuries, a reduced role, and frustration held him back. The season came and went as he barely made an appearance in the postseason, only racking up 30 total minutes of action as the Jazz fell in the second round again to the LA Lakers. The demise of the Utah Jazz finally erupted in 2011, when the team's lone all-star Deron Williams had a falling out with head coach Jerry Sloan over the way he ran things on the floor. It was a long time coming, but the end of an era in Utah had arrived. Boozer had left the summer prior for a variety of reasons. Okur tore his Achilles, Kirilenko had been fed up for 4 years now, and now Williams was done. The team sent Deron to New Jersey pretty much immediately, but again sat on Andrei to round out the season, wasting his time and the franchise's money. The Jazz lost 10 of their last 13 games this year, with Kirilenko not appearing in any of those last 10 games. The summer of 2011 was a saving grace for the now 30-year-old, as not only was his contract complete in Utah, but the NBA as a whole was left in a state of limbo as the lockout loomed over the coming season. No start date was in sight, and many domestic and international players would take their talents to other pro leagues worldwide. This obviously gave Andrei the opportunity to return to Russia. To begin the summer, he would join the national team once more to compete in Eurobasket 2011. Except this time, he was not the lone NBA talent on the roster, as center Timofey Mozgov and up-and-coming point guard Alexei Shved would join him in leading the national team. This squad would tear through the group stage, going a perfect 5-0 before heading into the knockout round. Then a victory over Serbia in a game in which Kirilenko would lead the team in scoring, rebounding, and assists pushed them into the semifinals of the tournament. Here, they would ultimately face defeat by the hands of the French squad, featuring 5 NBA players. But they would come out victorious in the bronze medal game over Macedonia to claim a top 3 finish, officially punching their ticket for the 2012 London Olympic Games. By the time the professional season rolled around, the NBA remained at a standstill, so Kirilenko took the opportunity to stay home and signed a contract to return to CSKA Moscow for the 2012 Russia Professional Basketball League and EuroLeague seasons. A little note here, from 2011 to 13, the RSL became the PBL, but the Moscow team remained throughout. In this run, Moscow would claim their 10th consecutive top-tier Russian championship, and in the EuroLeague they would finish second overall, with a 19-3 record throughout. Kirilenko would star for the team, averaging 14 points with an impressive 53 and 41% shooting and team-leading 7 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and 1.9 blocks per game. He would actually lead all of the EuroLeague in both blocks and rebounds per game, securing the league's MVP award in the process. It should come as no surprise that many NBA teams wanted to bring Andrei statebound for the coming season. But first, the summer of 2012. Kirilenko and the Russian national team had unfinished business to handle before anyone would even consider where they would play coming this pro season. The highest finish the Russians had ever accomplished in any Olympics were way back in 2000 when they reached the first round of the knockout competition. This year was going to be different. To open the tournament, Kirilenko would drop 35 points in a 20-point blowout victory over the host nation Great Britain, who were sporting noteworthy NBA veterans Luol Deng and Joel Freeland. Then they would defeat the international powerhouses of China, Brazil, and Spain, finishing pool play with a 4-1 record, only losing one match by 2 points to Australia. In the knockout stage, Russia again played stupendously in their opening matchup against Lithuania, as Kirilenko dropped 19 and 13 with 3 steals and 3 blocks en route to the victory. But in the semifinal, they would taste defeat to one of their biggest rivals, a rematch with Spain. Nevertheless, Russia still had the opportunity to compete for their first Olympic medal in the bronze medal game against Argentina. Here, matched up against NBA veteran Luis Scola and likely future Hall of Famer Manu Ginobili, Andrei would play amazingly, putting up 20 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, along with Alexei Shved's 25 and 7, to come out on top 81-77. Finally claiming Russia's first Olympic basketball medal. Kirilenko would finish the tournament ranking top 8 in all of scoring, rebounding, assists, steals, and blocks, proving to be the jack of all trades and solidifying himself on the all-Olympic first team. This would officially be Andrei's last time representing the Russian national team, going out with a bang. Entering the 2013 NBA season, Kirilenko decided to return to the NBA, this time to play with the Minnesota Timberwolves, signing a 1-year contract worth $9 million with a second-year player option. The Wolves were a bottom feeder in the NBA ever since they moved on from Kevin Garnett a few years prior, but the organization did have a few young pieces to be optimistic about. Second-year lottery picks Derek Williams and fellow Eurostar Ricky Rubio, along with the rising star Kevin Love and savvy Euro veterans Nikola Pekovic and Andrei Kirilenko. The Wolves were supposed to go the distance for the first time in a long time. On paper, there was a lot to be optimistic about with this roster, but injuries devastated the older crowd, including Love only appearing in 18 games, and Kirilenko only reaching 64. The inconsistent health held the team back to only 31 wins, missing the playoffs. In these games, the 31-year-old Andrei looked just as one would expect, as he put up 12 points, 5 boards, 2 assists, 1.5 steals, and a block a game. A little bit of everything. After the disappointing year, Kirilenko would choose to become a free agent and accept a $3 million contract with a player option to join the Brooklyn Nets. The aging forward played sparingly this season, as the team featuring former teammate Darren Williams along with aging stars Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett would impressively reach the second round of the playoffs before losing to the Big Three-led Miami Heat. At the end of the season, Andrei would opt into his player option, only to be traded shortly thereafter to the Philadelphia 76ers, who were tanking their way through an embarrassing 18-win season. Seeing this turned Andrei off to the idea of ever playing in the NBA again, as he flat out no-showed the team until they waived him. He would round out his career with one last return to Moscow to help the club claim the VTB United League Championship, along with a third-place finish in the EuroLeague. Upon the completion of the 2015 season, Andrei would announce his retirement from basketball and accept a presidential role with the Russian national team to begin his post-playing career. If you replay Kirilenko's NBA career a dozen times, I think we unfortunately witnessed one of the worst ones. Injuries and being stuck with a team that I believe held him back and refused to let him prosper anywhere else held him back. In today's league, players with his talent are traded or waived so they may be used for their full potential. This is not what happened here. Even with his handicapped NBA career though, Andrei amassed 1,461 blocked shots, ranking him 39th all time, and tied for being the shortest in the top 40, which I must add he did in only 797 games. Less than every name ahead of him on the list. He also averaged 1.86 blocks per game, ranking him 30th all time. 1,097 career steals, good for 134th all time, and 1.38 steals per game, good for 119th all time. He also made 3 All-NBA defensive teams and 1 All-Star game. This understandably may not jump out at you, but where I believe Kirilenko truly shined was with his national team. I sat down and documented the statistics for every Eurobasket tournament dating back to 1995, since the data from 93 and earlier is not easily available. This is not something I could quickly look up, by the way. Basketball Reference does not record continental tournaments, so if anyone wants 25 years worth of European basketball stats, message me. But over the past 2.5 decades of Eurobasket tournaments, Kirilenko ranks 5th in points at 650, 5th in rebounds at 284, 2nd in blocks at 65, and 1st in steals with an astonishing 100. 23 more than 2nd place. He would win 3 medals with the Russian national team. A gold in the 2007 Eurobasket tournament where he took home MVP honors, a bronze in the 2011 Eurobasket tournament, and a bronze in the 2012 London Olympics where he was named to the All-Olympic first team. Kirilenko helped put Russian basketball on the global map. He was beloved by players, coaches, and fans worldwide. In my opinion, he deserves to be in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it more than you think. I love researching and creating these deep dive retrospective videos. The history of basketball is fascinating, and I look forward to producing more in the future. Please comment your thoughts on Kirilenko's Hall of Fame status, as well as who else you think is deserving of a video like this. Like the video, please, and subscribe. I will see you all next time.